of, I'd say, the past 2 weeks, which is Obama's job plan.
Yeah, like I want to say it's easy to be pessimistic, and then especially at the same time, Obama's also campaigning. You know, tons of roadblock. Like my heart breaks, but like I don't see this first draft if you want to call it going through.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's all good ideas that he presents, and I think, like he said, he was trying to bring out ideas that Republicans and Democrats had supported in the past. You know,
they're not all his ideas.
Sorry?
They're not all his ideas.
Exactly. And, but I think what is going to make this just stall, just like raising the debt ceiling, is really the fact that he's relying on these cuts that they just agreed to, and he's again insisting on raising taxes on the wealthy and corporations, which I'm not saying is a bad thing, but let's face it, there's a lot of Republicans right now, a certain group of Republicans, Tea Partiers, who are very, very, very basically against any kind of raise of taxes on the wealthy or on corporations.
Absolutely. I'm with you on the fact that there's most likely very little chance that this bill actually gets passed in its current form, for sure, and at all. Just in general.
Really?
I'm somewhat skeptical that there will be a Jobs Act at all. The Republicans, it is to their political advantage to not see anything passed until the elections in 2012. Mm-hmm. Now, I think that the Obama administration fully recognizes that all of the things that the Republicans would not like, such as the massive closing of the tax loopholes for the oil subsidies, because they're going after big oil in this bill in a way that's almost unprecedented. The tax increases for the rich, as well as the tax specific clause in there for taxing global jets. All of these types of things which the Republicans would be against, all actually technically start on January 1st, 2013.
Okay.
So they start when the new president starts, whether or not that's Obama or Governor Harris. Most likely going to be Harris, and the Republican nominee. So that's actually working in its favor. Because then if he is able to pass some form of bill, he can say, you can pass it, and then it won't come into effect really until after the next election cycle. Wink, wink. If you have power, you could just say, no, we're not actually going to do it. Completely within your authority to do that at that point in time.
Which I don't think would actually be a good thing. I mean, if he says it's all paid for, but if they cancel that, then it's not paid for.
Yeah, but then he and his base still get what they want, which is a massive infrastructure, and the economy still gets what it needs, which is a massive influx in a massive stimulus to get people working again.
You don't think that this, like, people who normally vote Republican, I mean, if you were a Republican, wouldn't you be disgusted with your party if they chose to make this more about politics than about, let's say, just getting something done? It doesn't necessarily have to be this jobs bill, but if you just play chicken while you're in Congress, I mean, if that's all you're doing, and that's what people were comparing it to, this debt crisis, which is really two parties playing chicken,
Because I was saying, like, a good plan today is better than the best plan tomorrow. Because at the point, you just want something. And let's say you did the generalization that people who vote Republican are going to be blue collar workers. Just to do that generalization. It a lot of stimulus, a lot of construction. So substantially, yes, you want to support your party, but your party is standing in your way from a huge, hundreds of millions of dollars of construction projects starting.
Right.
And also, I thought this when you said that this plan would come in 2013 when the next GOP, whichever that may be, comes in.
Paying for it comes in.
Paying for it. Okay. Well, even if you, do you really? Let's say it goes through. Do you really want to be the party that killed the job, that canceled all these contracts or stuff, or canceled them abruptly?
Yeah.
So that's a strategic move, being like, oh yeah, if you're thinking, cancel it later if you want.
No, so having that clause in that pretty much states, all of these tax loopholes and whatnot, it all kicks in December, at the end of 2013. That enables the Republican Party right now to vote in favor of it. you get the immediate stimulus the economy needs. And then when it gets down to actually paying for it,
They choose not to.
then they can choose not to. Exactly. If they're in power, they can choose not to lower those tax rules, to not abide by that law by changing the law, and then make up a new way to make government solvent.
I want to know what you guys thought of, because the stimulus, the renovating schools and bridges and highways, that makes, that's easy to understand. But when you give subsidies to hiring new workers, I was wondering, is that really going to create jobs? Because you can say to the company, it'd be cheaper to pay this person, but if you don't have new business generating, you're not going to have a person at all.
Yeah.
So construction, that in a way circulating money within the states, but what are the states going to do to get new money into the country? I guess it's more something I always worry for Canada about, what we're going to do for new money.
Yeah.
So Canada is prospective innovation center, our huge exports, what was this decade, just ago, CANDU reactors. We had a big thing, we had something to offer us the world.
Right.
And aside from resources.
Yeah.
But generating
It's a
new
good
money.
point. It's a good point because there's a lot of these companies, a lot of big corporations right now that have records amount of cash, just cash on in their accounts, and they're not hiring, and people are saying why aren't you hiring? And obviously some of that cash is in case something bad happens, which it might. I mean, we might see a double-dip recession. But there's also CEOs who are saying we're not against hiring. It's just there's no demand. I mean, if no one's, we have enough people working for our current demand. If we just get more workers, it's just going to be a waste. In terms of which is true. I mean, and one of the big things here was the cut in payroll taxes, which he said this figure in his speech, which I don't know why he would say, because I didn't think it was very impressive. He said that on average, an average family would have $1,500 more a year because of all these tax cuts. Now, $1,500 more, I calculate that's about $28 more a week for a family.
Right.
If you get $1,500 more and you're in tough economic crisis times, as we are at this point, are you really going to be spending it on something new? Because I think I would just save it or pay down debt.
It's tough. There's a lot of, it's hard to say. There's a lot of lower class in the United States, and $1,500 is not a lot in the grand scheme, but it's something, and I think over time it would mean something.
Right, but we're not talking about, the problem right now seems to not be medium or long term, it's really just short term.
Yeah, I think it's a huge selling point. The thing when we lower the tax rate here about 1%, in my head hey, but I come from a middle class family, I don't have to pay that much, but I think 1% off of my purchases that are taxable, food isn't.
Yeah.
So in grocery, would I rather I have 1% more, or would I rather have the government have 1% more revenue? So on an individual, it's not a huge selling point.
No, it really isn't for me either, and that's one of the big, not only do I think that it's going to be really hard to pass this bill, but personally, and I was wondering what you guys thought, I don't see this having that big of an impact. Maybe psychologically it might have an impact, which is always a big thing in economics that not a lot of people talk about. Maybe people will have more confidence in the situation, but from an economics perspective, $1,500 more is, I don't see people really spending that. They're not going to go buy the latest car or something.
It's not long term.
Yeah,
that's my beef with this. It's not long term.
Well, the teacher has to do something, right? He has to kind of
Well, I think he's addressing his base more than anything. I think he's addressing his base, going with the teachers, going with the unions, especially.
But teachers would be more long term, I think, because
And that's the only long term I'm seeing. But in the act, I'm not seeing any
sustainable thing.
Exactly. There's no indication of it to be sustainable. They're putting $50 billion for the teachers' part of the act. But okay, sure, you're going to hire a bunch of teachers, but it's going to cost more than $50 billion to pay for their income for 25 years.
Yeah, at the end of the day, I think it sucks you have to follow George Bush. Now he had a lot of mistakes, and he probably goes home and says what the hell? What the hell was that guy thinking? This makes sense. I got to do something which works, and it's just not. You can hope that you hire new people, and in theory, new people help you grow your businesses or infrastructure. But you're right. If they're going to invest a lot in infrastructure, and if it doesn't have any sort of sustaining compound, then you're just digging the hole, and you're not going to
Just be like, yeah, I felt like when Obama, a couple months after Obama took office, and people like, you know, the honeymoon was over, and like, oh, what's with this? What's with this? My heart went out to him, like, he must have been at home being like, how do these people think that like, what they're mad about now was like what I did in the past 2.5 months? But I just go back to like, echo what Eric said about like, it's short term, but it's a way to build confidence. And the only reason I'm echoing that is because I was watching the Kubera report right before I came here, and the pundit they had on was saying the same thing. It's like short term, but you need a confidence. You need to be the spend, be a catalyst of whatever change you're going to hope is going to sustain you in the long term.
Right.
Well, I think that great if you got a catalyst, but if you got nothing, you got no foundation to sustain you for the long term, what are you going to do?
This is what I was asking, like, I said, like, what's the way you use for new money?
Okay, but that's the thing, there is no new money.
Yeah.
So our level of technology is at a point where it's obviously getting better exponentially. The more it gets better, the more it gets advanced, the less human labor we actually need to make or produce the goods and services that our society requires to operate. Now that's a problem. It's always been a problem in our history. And now I think it's really going to be an issue because you say corporations have massive amounts of wealth. There's an abundant amount of labor. Labor cost isn't the same in the Western world, if you will, than it is in the developing nations. So they're more prone to use the highest level of technology. So you're going to make a large investment, you're going to go and get newest tech. So you get the newest tech to reduce their labor costs. And then they're going to put that newest tech in an area that has the lowest labor costs. So you're still not addressing the fact that American workers won't work for the same wage as people in Micronesia.
And I think that's why the education part of it is probably the most important thing that the U.S. has to reform if they want to be number one. And why more spending in infrastructure? I mean, it gives jobs to blue collar workers, but I don't think those are the jobs of the future. You know, I think like you said, like there's too much labor out there already. We're spending all this money on more labor work, but is that that's not sustainable? Or is that?
Even with education, you gotta you can't say all education is sustainable. Correct me if I'm wrong, but just being oversaturated market of extra educated people and
I agree.
private debts and student debts, for example, especially in the U.S. where going to school is not cheap.
No, not at all.
Well, there's some fields that have to probably be more encouraged.
Hopefully you can.
I know there's this one like data analyst, which is sounds like a really boring job, but it is actually just like they need someone in math who can go through all of the statistics that a company gets, and actually make something out of it and see like, oh, you could save this, or you're having problems here and here and there, or a bottleneck here and there. There's not enough people doing that. I read a whole huge article on that, how there's just not enough people doing that. There's actually been this problem with science and math in the U.S. for a long time, where I think more than half of high school kids in the U.S. don't take any kind of advanced science classes at all.
They just need to find a way to make data analysis sexy, because these books that come out like Freakonomics that are really just looking at causality, or taking mass information and finding some cool way to present it. And the kids want to do that. They said the market was saturated with forensic scientists after CSI came out, because that became cool all of a sudden. That was it, mostly being in a lab. Because CSI presented this kind of Judge Dredd scenario where you could be be the cop and the jury and the execution at the same time. So CSI, they go to the lab, they go out, they arrest the people, and they go to comments. But because of that, they said there's a lot more interest in the forensic science. So we do turn down Hollywood, or LA to make those sexy.
So we should bring Hollywood in and try to make data analysis sexy.
But
do a Mad Men version of
sex, drugs, and
sex, drugs, and magic.
Exactly.